Hey, it's Susan Ortolano here, relationship and marriage coach from susanortolano.com. I am coming in live because I wanted to talk about something really important. But first of all, if you hear mowing going on, there is a lot of lawn mowing going on in my neighborhood right now. So you may not be able to hear it, but I certainly can because I am facing my backyard as I go and do these lives, and they're in my backyard, so to speak. So there's a lot of lawn mowing at this moment. I always like to start out really with a message. Hi, Cynthia. I like to start out with a message, and the message comes from this Oracle deck that I love. I actually collect Oracle card decks, and so I like to pull a message, and it's really interesting how these messages tend to really fit where people are or need to be. And I'm just randomly shuffling, and this will be put in the featured area, Cynthia, so if you can go back and access at any time, not a problem. So the card for today, and I will explain the message, is, oops, that's not it, be on solid ground. Be on solid ground. So being on solid ground is just being like super clear, super grounded in what you believe, what you think, what your boundaries are, and it fits into the topic today, where you feel you stand. It's like when you're really indecisive and confused and don't know what to do and are wondering what's this and what's that and what's going on, it really has your energy kind of be super scattered. And so this is asking you to be on solid ground, to just get really clear about yourself, about what you want from marriage, about what you want in life in general, so that you're not running around scattered and you're not, kind of freaking out. So it's really about getting really clarity is about being on solid ground, and that's something that the card is telling us today. So what I wanted to talk about, one can call it the other F word in marriage, and it is a topic that a lot of people don't really like to look at, and it's called forgiveness. And the traditional thought about forgiveness is somebody does you wrong, and at some point you get the courage or you get whatever you need to get inside of yourself to actually forgive somebody. Well, I think that's a bunch of BS if you ask me, because first of all, we are not the judge and jury. We really shouldn't be the judge and jury. And forgiving others is like hanging them on the hook or drinking poison and expecting them to die, right? Or expecting them to suffer. And that is not going to solve anything, and it's definitely not going to clear you of the feelings, the negative feelings that you have going on. So I'm going to talk about what really needs to happen when it comes to forgiveness. And not everybody's going to like it or understand it, but once I get through explaining it, it will make total sense. So you don't have to forget what has happened. Somebody has done you wrong. Somebody has done something that has really hurt you or said something that is really inappropriate to you. And we're really talking in the marriage right now, although this can apply to anybody in your life. And it's not about forgetting. It's not about forgetting. It's not about just letting something go and just pretending it didn't happen or stuffing down your feelings. It's different. And I know in some instances, it's really hard. It's like somebody will do something and that's a deal breaker. If there's abuse in your marriage, that is a deal breaker, and you still have to take the action you need to take. You still have to hold your boundaries, stand in your requirements and your deal breakers and all that kind of stuff. But ultimately, even if it's something so bad, you're going to have to forgive at some point, and I will tell you what that means and how to actually do it. So imagine your spouse does something that is really bad, that for you crosses a boundary, is a deal breaker, or maybe is riding the line, or just really hurt your feelings. It can be anything like that. You're not going to just go, oh, okay, let me just stifle those feelings. Let me just let it go. Let me just pretend it didn't happen. Let me just let them off the hook. No, you have to let yourself off the hook. That's who's on the hook. Whenever you are judging, whenever you are triggered by something that somebody has said that has caused you the feelings of pain or upset or emotional, whatever it is that's living inside of you, the only way you can get some peace, the only way that you can actually feel free on the inside is to forgive yourself. And I will explain exactly what I mean and exactly how to do that. Again, this is not about, oh, you don't take appropriate action, or there are no consequences, or you don't hold boundaries, or you don't share how you feel about something. This is about letting it out of you from the inside. So we all have judgments, right? We all have judgments. And we all have pain when if we feel somebody does us wrong, we all have something that lives inside that does not feel good at all. And it may give you a knot in your stomach, it may hurt your heart, it may be something that you're like, oh my gosh, now my marriage is really on the line because it is crossing a boundary. But whether or not you decide to walk away from your marriage, and I think there are certain instances where that's the appropriate action to take, if you want, whether you want to save your marriage or whether you want to walk away, you still have to forgive yourself. And what are you forgiving yourself for? Because you didn't do anything wrong, so to speak. And I hate that word wrong, but you didn't do anything. You were just kind of sort of minding your own business, and somebody said something and suddenly the trigger came up, or suddenly your feelings got really hurt, or somebody did something that was, we'll say, really harmful to you. What you have to own is your own judgment about it, because that is the one thing that nobody can fix for you except you. So if you're judging your partner because they, I don't know, I'm going to try to make something up here, because let's just say there was infidelity. And I know for a lot of people, and I did a whole video on why people cheat, infidelity for a lot of people is a horrible thing to experience, even on the other side of it. Most people don't have affairs because they're just happy-go-lucky and they're like, oh, look, I feel like doing that because nothing is wrong in my life. Everything's great and I just feel like doing that. Now, some people are like that, but most people cheat because there's something not feeling right within them, and they don't really feel like they have another way to heal what's going on inside of them. And there are so many ways to do that where somebody doesn't have to cheat. Now, as I mentioned in the video, which is in the featured area, I did a whole thing on cheating, and I found this really great article where it really looked at things from the perspective of the person who cheated and why they did. And there were like 8 or 9, I think maybe 10 reasons that people did commit adultery, did cheat, and it's fascinating to watch, and I suggest you go into the featured area and watch it. I think I put it in there. Otherwise, the video is somewhere down the page, but I will put it in the featured area to make sure you can just scroll through and get access to it. But let's just say that happens, and you're hurt, you're devastated, it's a deal breaker for you, and you're really on that fence about, do I stay, do I leave, do we work this through, and your heart hurts and everything hurts, and you can't believe this has happened in your life, in your marriage. You never imagined in a million years that something like this would happen, and you feel like you're on the receiving end of it because it was your partner who cheated. Now, I know somebody in this group posted about that, and my heart goes out to her, and anybody else who's experienced it from either side. And again, it's like the person who does the cheating isn't always doing it because they're a horrible person. It does break the vows, it does break the commitment, but sometimes the reasons behind it are something to really look at. If you are on the other side, you're the receiving side of it, or the I don't want to say the victim side of it, or you've been cheated on and you have no idea what happened. Sometimes it's really helpful to find out why your partner cheated before you make any decisions, but I'm digressing a little bit, just using this as an example. So whether or not, let's just say this happens and you decide, you've got this decision to make, do I leave this marriage or I stay and try to work things through? Either way, you have to forgive yourself. Why? Because you are judging and you are feeling the pain. And the only way to get rid of that judgment and truly be free is to forgive yourself. And what are you forgiving yourself for? You're forgiving yourself for judging your partner, and you're probably going to have some choice name for them. So, example, somebody cheats and you're on the receiving end, you were cheated on, and you're going to have some choice words for your partner. You're going to be name calling on the inside and maybe on the outside too. You might, be calling them all kinds of things. Your admiration or your respect for them just may have gone like this because you now are seeing them in a different way. Well, that's step one, is to own your judgment, own your perspective. How are you holding this inside of yourself? Are you holding them as the bane of your existence, the enemy, the perpetrator, the one who screwed everything up? You got to own your judgment first, because this is the only way you're going to be set free. Second, you have to remember that what you're letting go of is that judgment of them inside of you. You're not letting anybody off the hook except yourself. That's the whole point of the self-forgiveness, is to let yourself off the hook. Now, what you decide to do, again, it doesn't mean you don't take appropriate action or hold your boundaries or have discussions or kick somebody out of the house and say it's over. That is up to what you decide to do about it. But again, either way, you have to free yourself, and that's what forgiveness is all about. So you tell yourself this, really hold on to your heart. I don't care if you're a man or woman, hold on to your heart. I forgive myself for judging my partner, fill in your partner's name, as a cheater, as a fill in the blank. I forgive myself for judging myself as, or for however you're judging yourself, because do not think when somebody cheats, you're not judging yourself as something, or for letting this happen, or for letting this get to this point, or for not noticing it was happening ahead of time, or for thinking you did something wrong because to have this happen. You have to forgive yourself for judging yourself as well as for judging the other person. So forgiving yourself, I forgive myself for judging my partner as an asshole, as a cheater, as a slimeball, whatever choice word you have. And just imagine the energy just letting go when you do that. I forgive myself for judging my spouse for cheating on me. I forgive myself for judging my spouse as an asshole. I forgive myself for judging myself for not noticing this sooner. I forgive myself for judging myself for being naive. I forgive myself for judging myself for thinking that I'm not good enough, and that's why they cheated. I forgive myself for judging myself as somebody who actually has a cheating spouse. I forgive myself for judging my spouse as a loser, as a jerk, as an asshole, whatever it is. And by doing that, you're literally letting go of the energy that you're holding on to. Now, some people feel they have to hold on to that energy. And why it's not good is because it's drinking poison so you can die. The other person's not going to die, so to speak, with your judgment. Now, in a marriage, yes, your judgment may affect them, but it's not going to have the effect that you think it does. It's not going to right a wrong. It's not going to fix things. It's just going to have both of you be miserable, and you might as well not be miserable. Because somebody who cheats and they get caught isn't feeling great generally about what they did. And in this video that I did, in the article that I was reading or talking about, all the people who cheated, for the variety of reasons they did, felt awful about it. Now, there were a couple of instances where they were literally being abused, and that was the reason that they cheated. They were too afraid to go to their partner and say, hey, I can't do this anymore, or maybe they felt under control, the control of the partner, or if they went and had a conversation, they'd be beaten up. That's the reason they went and cheated, and for that gave them the courage to walk away. So that is something that, you can kind of see from a different perspective. Or if somebody wasn't feeling like their partner wasn't giving them any attention, or their partner was never home, or whatever it was, you can have an understanding of why the cheating happened. It doesn't mean it was a great move. It doesn't mean it was the best move. So if something like that happens, and this can apply to anything, you know, your partner calls you a name just out of the blue, you happen to be in an argument, and you can forgive yourself, and maybe you said something that you didn't mean to say. Forgive myself for judging myself for saying this particular word, or I forgive myself for judging my spouse for doing that thing. And the more you forgive yourself and really do it from a heart space, don't do it transactionally. And what I mean by transactionally, don't say it just to say it. It is something that you really want to feel in your heart, but it is a form of release. And releasing is one of the most important things, most important skills you can have in a marriage and in life, is to be able to let go and release all the ick that lives inside of us, because we've got limiting beliefs. We've got old stories and programming and beliefs about ourselves and about other people. And then you throw in the mix about your spouse because your spouse did something you deem horrible. You want to be able to release, you want to be able to let go, and this is just one way to do it. I'm actually teaching this to you right now. There are other ways to do it, which I only teach the people who work with me. But this is something that is really simple to do, and it can get you to a place where you feel free. And even if you have to say to your spouse, I can't be in this marriage anymore, or even if you have to have some really tough discussions and have some boundaries with your spouse, or take a stand and say, no, you're not going to call me that word anymore. I'm just not going to be having it. It's freeing you to be able to say that without having a heavy emotional charge inside. It's one of the things that, oh, here they're mowing in my yard again. It's one of the worst things we can do to ourselves is to keep on holding on to that judgment, hold on to that poison, so to speak, without letting it go. And again, there are several ways to let something go where it really allows the energy to pass through. And there are techniques that I teach only to the people who work with me. But this one, while I do teach it to the people who work with me, this one is something that I feel I can teach for free. But it is so freeing when you can let the heaviness of the emotional charge go and just take the action steps you need to take. And you may still feel bad for a little bit, but then you want to go back and do it again. I forgive myself for judging myself for feeling bad. I forgive myself for judging my spouse for doing X, Y, Z. Again, you need to have boundaries. You need to be clear about what works for you, what doesn't work for you in the marriage. You need to know where your deal breakers are in a marriage, even if it's been 10 years. It's time to sit down and have that conversation so that both of you are on the same page about, hey, this is the container I need to have for this marriage. And if it's not that way, I just can't, unfortunately, be in this marriage anymore. So this is something that is easy to do. You can do it over and over and over again. I call it compassionate self-forgiveness. And it is really letting you off the hook. Now I'm going to tell you a story. I worked with this couple, and she cheated on her husband. They were married for about 6 years. She cheated on her husband and got pregnant. Ouch. And I talk about this couple a lot because they're such a beautiful example of what's possible even in some of the worst situations. So she gets pregnant what had happened was, and there's always a reason behind something, is that he would say to her, you know, they thought they were really happy, and he would come to her and say, hey, I want to go fishing with my buddies this weekend. Are you okay with that? And she's like, okay. Next weekend, hey, my buddies and I, and half of them were his cousins, are going to go here, and we're going to do the weekend here. Are you okay with that? And he would ask her. What happened with her is she did not speak up. She did not own her perspective. She did not own her voice. And one of the weekends he went away, she started meandering around Facebook and saw an ex-boyfriend, saw his profile. and went to connect with him and reconnect with him, which became flirtatious online and then became meeting in person, and obviously led to a full-blown affair. And part of the saddest part about this whole process was, first of all, he asked her. Second of all, she didn't feel comfortable speaking up. And that was something we had to work on. Why did she not speak up and say, you know, I'd really appreciate it if you were home this weekend so we could spend time together? She did not say that. And so she was feeling neglected. And so again, one thing led to another, which is not one thing led to another. It's always a choice. She made a choice because this is something she felt, well, this guy was a boyfriend from high school. This guy was giving her all this love and attention, and it was feeling good in the moment, and she didn't feel she was getting that love and attention from her husband, who was just the nicest guy, but was going off, you know, on these trips all the time. But again, he asked her. So there was this big mess going on, and it all started from not communicating her truth. And when somebody does that and then the partner goes off and goes fishing with the friends, then you can't expect somebody to read your mind. You know, you really do have to speak up and speak your truth, which is so important. So anyway, so she's pregnant, and of course she has to tell him. So she tells her husband what happened, and he was undone. He was so hurt. He literally packed up and left, and his parents happened to live about 2 blocks away, and he went to stay there. He was planning on divorcing her. He was done. He had moved out. He was so hurt. And she was like, wow. She didn't expect that to happen. She thought that they would come together, have some conversations, that she would be able to get his forgiveness, and they would figure out a plan together. And unfortunately, that's not what happened. But at that point, that's when they reached out to me. And through our work together, first of all, we discovered so many things. We uncovered some of the things, you know, people hold on to so much and don't have conversations about it, don't deeply communicate about something, and then things get swept under the rug, and we know that's a common term. Things get left festering inside, and if people don't really communicate with each other, then they don't know what's going on in the other person's head or the other person's heart. They don't know how the other person is feeling. Certainly there are ways to communicate that are really effective and ways to communicate that are not very effective, and of course I teach that as well. So what happened with this couple? They came in, we got to the bottom of why he was going fishing all the time, and as it turns out, he had somebody really close to him die, and he was grieving, and he never allowed himself to fully grieve. So part of the way he was dealing with that death was to be gone, was to go out and do something that felt like kind of an escapism. Going, you know, it's like he and his friends weren't doing anything stupid. They literally were camping or fishing or, you know, doing that kind of stuff. But for him, it was kind of an escape. And he was able to recognize it, burst into tears, realize he had not done the grieving work that he needed to do. And when he got really connected to his wife, it just kind of opened up his heart space. And then he would feel the grief, and he didn't want to do that. So it was a lot easier for him to just, you know, say, hey, you know, it's okay if my friends and I go fishing this weekend, and just go. And so that was thing number one. Thing number two, she realized she did not tell him how she was feeling. And that was one of her biggest regrets, is not saying to him, I don't feel great when you go every weekend. Sometimes I want to say no. And he's like, why didn't you? And she says, I was afraid you'd get mad. And so she really had to learn how to really speak up for herself, and he needed to learn how to face his deep emotions. And a lot of people don't like to face their emotions, and then things get really messy. People take actions that are not always the best way to handle something, and then something like this happens. So they were able to do a lot of self-forgiveness. They were able to forgive themselves for judging each other, forgive themselves for judging themselves, And then there was, once things were really back to solid ground in their relationship between them, in their marriage, he moved back in, and then they had to make a decision about the baby. And at that point, they decided, and they had worked with the biological father, who apparently had 4 kids from other baby mamas. I guess the guy got around, was not interested in a relationship with this woman. He just was, interested in a sexual relationship with this woman, but knew that, I can't remember what she had told the other guy about why she was available for the affair, but she told him something. But she and her husband, we sat down, we talked about what they really wanted to do. Now, they had both wanted to have a baby, and they had been through a lot of fertility stuff. And so obviously we then knew who was infertile in that particular case. But they decided to get the biological father out of the picture. They negotiated with him. He was okay with that. They had that baby, and they decided to stay together and raise the baby as their own. So that little boy does not know any other father except this man, the husband. And they were able to forgive themselves for judging themselves, for judging each other. He was able to deal with the reason he was, going away for the weekends and all that kind of stuff, his own grief. She was able to step up and ask for what she needed and to be honest and truthful about how she was feeling. And they actually bonded even more as a result. But this doesn't happen unless you really face things together. You have to face things together, otherwise you're not going to get anywhere, and you're going to be looking at all the external things that have happened instead of going deep within with each other, with yourself, so that you can make decisions. Most importantly, whatever was going to happen between them, they had to forgive themselves. They had to forgive themselves, and we worked a lot on that, and they were able to do that. And this couple I worked with, this particular situation happened 6 years ago. And again, we worked together. They lived close enough to me where they were able to come in person. Normally I work via Zoom video. Doesn't matter either way. It was really sort of, they lived so close, it was kind of dumb for them not to come in person, and it was pre-COVID, so I was seeing people in person who lived locally, but they were able to put their marriage back on track. We worked on skill sets, we worked on gaining clarity, creating a vision for where they wanted to go from here, and how they were going to raise this boy. So this boy is probably, from my check-ins with them, one of the most spoiled, and of course I see them on Facebook too, one of the most spoiled little boys, very loved. I was invited to his first birthday, my husband and I were, and boy, they went all out for this little guy. He had the most extraordinary, extravagant birthday party ever. He's such a loved boy, and all he knows is that her husband is his dad. And down the road, they're going to have to make a decision in terms of, telling this boy who his biological father is. But the father he knows is the husband. Their marriage has been on solid ground ever since. They went through the process because there was infidelity. I had to take them through a process so they could really heal it. But ultimately, they had to do the self-forgiveness. And that is really what let them off the hook in terms of holding on to all that pain. And when somebody is grieving the loss of a family member, and this is what was happening to this man, you can't get out of that without really facing your feelings. And there's so many reasons that people, take that action and unfortunately don't face their feelings and are not able to communicate. And that's something that we want to get through before something like this happens, before something happens that has somebody have to forgive themselves for judging the other person. Now, you can do self-forgiveness on simple things. Gosh, my husband didn't go to the store. It's like the 3rd time I asked him to go pick up XYZ. I don't know why he can't do it. And then you start going through the name calling and the judgments in your mind. You can do self-forgiveness on that. It doesn't have to be a huge thing. It just has to be something that is bothering you, that is triggering you. So I hope this was really helpful in understanding a little more about forgiveness. You know, ultimately, the forgiveness has to come from here. And it's not about the other person, it's about your judgment of the other person. That's what's going to set you free and either allow you to take the appropriate action or allow you to do what you need to do to rebuild that marriage if it's something really bad. Sometimes a series of small things that you're just like, oh my gosh, she never does this. Oh my gosh, he never does that. Or, oh my gosh, she always does this and it gets on my last nerve. Or, oh my gosh, he always does this and it gets on my last nerve. Those are things that you can continue to do so the marriage stays on, if I get it, on solid ground. And that is it for me this weekend. If you are struggling in your marriage and you are kind of at your wit's end, you don't really know what to do, you may be on the fence as to whether you're going to stay or go. I've been working with couples for many, many years, and I have a pretty good track record of people staying together. Sure, there are reasons that somebody would leave a marriage, and if that happens, what I want somebody to do is leave a marriage empowered. And so ultimately the decision is up to the couple. But if somebody does leave a marriage, and it's only happened twice in all the years I've been doing this, one of them started off as sort of a green card marriage. So, you know, I'll say, you know, and the other one was the guy actually had a sex addiction and she just was not going to hang around for that. Other than that, I would say I have a really good track record of helping couples who want to stay together, and giving them all the tools they need to continue to work through the things that they need to work through to have their marriage be amazing. So if that is you and you're struggling, then you can reach out to have a discovery call. And on the discovery call, we talk about 3 things. First, we get clear on what's not working in the marriage. Next, we really get clarity on what the dream is, what it is that you actually want from this marriage, because even from the day you took your wedding vows, a lot of things may have changed and the dream may look a little different. And then we look at a plan like what next steps are best for you in moving forward. And if I can help, I'll show you exactly what that looks like. If I don't think I'm a fit to work with you, or if it's something that I don't work with, which would be addiction, untreated addiction, which would be domestic violence, which would be untreated severe mental health issues. I'm not talking about ADD or OCD. I'm talking about untreated bipolar, dissociative identity disorder. I literally have had people come where their spouse has untreated mental health issues. And for that, I have to do my due diligence and refer to the appropriate person. And once they are treated, they can come back, they're treated for a certain amount of time, and they're feeling, you know, on solid ground, they can come back and we can revisit working together. So again, I'm going to put up a link so that you can book that discovery call. I have a brand new, updated, free training that I just redid. I like to redo them every once in a while, and I've just redone it, and I'm going to put it in this group so that you get a chance to watch it and really check out the shifts that you need to definitely save your marriage. And if that means that you want to see what it would be like to have a conversation with me, to even determine whether you want to work with me or not, you'll get an opportunity to book that discovery call. And I will leave you some information so that you can go right to the booking and see if we are fit to work together. And if not, I'm very happy to refer you to a place that might be able to help you better. Anyway, that's me. I hope you're having a wonderful weekend. And I hope you're not going into the weekend dreading it. I hope you have a wonderful weekend and really use that time where you're not working to really bond with your spouse, with your family, enjoy your time together. You know, date nights are great, and it's something that I always recommend, but just having a date night over a lot of problems is not going to solve anything. But if you are at least trying to keep that up, that's something. So I hope you're able to have a beautiful weekend with your spouse, with your beloved, with your family, and I will be back next week with another topic. So have a beautiful weekend. And